Hi everyone, welcome to a voice recording of the book 1984 by George Orwell. Over the next few days, we will be covering each part of this book page by page, and I will be giving my personal analyses over my understanding of the book, its themes, and the overall message that George Orwell was trying to um, give. I hope that you guys will join me in this adventure to get to know this book, get to know the story, and hopefully you can also draw um, some messages of your own from your own interpretation of the book. Without any further ado, I'll get started. Chapter 1. It was a bright cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the vile wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl from though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him. I have already read the first page of this book, and I have made some notes about it. As we read this book, I'll be pausing um, over the different sections and sharing some of my thoughts about the book. Immediately, I sensed a theme of incompetence and inability. We read here that he was able to slip quickly through the glass doors, but not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of dust from entering with him. And even across the first page, this will be a recurring theme of Winston being able to do things, but not being able to do them well enough. Continuing. The hallway smelt of boiled cabbage and old rag mats. At one end of it, a colored poster, too large for indoor display, had been tacked to the wall. It depicted simply an enormous face, more than a meter wide, the face of a man of about 45, with a heavy black mustache and ruggedly handsome features. The other idea here that becomes very obvious is the idea of this person that we have not yet been introduced to being very large. We are told that their poster was too large for an indoor display. An enormous face, more than a meter wide, a heavy black mustache. The idea here seems to be very much of a large person, a larger than being character. And perhaps the reason for that is that for people existing inside this universe, inside this world of the book, they are made to feel so small in comparison to whoever this figure is. This figure is seen as so large that they shadow any other person in this universe. And that's something that's gonna come over again in this page. So I just want you to keep that in mind for now. Continuing. Winston made for the stairs. It was no use trying the lift. Even at the best of times, it was seldom working. And at present, the electric current was cut off during daylight hours. I'll pause again here to share another theme that immediately comes up. The idea of pointlessness, which goes hand in hand with the idea of incompetence that I mentioned earlier. It was no use trying the lift. It was seldom working. The electric current was cut off. There's this idea that things would just be pointless. It was no use trying the lift. It wouldn't work anyways. So on the one hand, we have this very, very large authoritative figure, and then on the other hand, for the other people in this universe, you have ideas of their actions being pointless, right? And there's other ideas here too. Um, One of the things I wrote here is the idea of scarcity and poverty, the state of being broken down or in ruins. Themes of pointlessness and unimportance already arising. Continuing. It was part of the economic drive. It was part of the economy drive in preparation for Hate Week. The flat was 7 flights up, and Winston, who was 39 and had a varicose ulcer above his right ankle, went slowly, resting several times along the way, on each landing. Opposite the lift shaft, the poster with the enormous face gazed from the wall. It was one of those pictures which are so contrived that the eyes follow you about when you move. Big Brother is watching you. The caption beneath it ran. So here again, the idea of this figure being big. Again, enormous face gazed from the wall. Big Brother. Perhaps ideas of this figure being large are set in place to make people feel smaller. And just as our main character feels that their actions are unimportant or pointless. Perhaps that is the point of Big Brother as we have been introduced to them here, being big, being large. And the other very obvious idea here is the idea of observation. Gazing from the wall, Big Brother is watching you. So the interesting concept here is your actions being pointless, but still you're being observed. And the other thing too, um, resting several times on the way. Again, the idea of incompetence. Why couldn't Winston just walk up the stairs in one go? Why did he have to rest? Or even if he did, why was that important to mention? If we are reading this book from the perspective of Winston narrating his experiences and choosing what would be important to show, that means that he feels that his incompetence is something that needs to be highlighted, or that that's something that defines him. Continuing. Inside the flat, a fruity voice was reading out a list of figures, which had something to do with the production of pig iron. The voice came from an oblong metal plate, like a dulled mirror, which formed part of the surface of the right-hand wall. Winston turned the switch, and the voice sank somewhat, though the words were still distinguishable. Again, the idea of helplessness. Winston is taking actions, but their consequences are not being as much as he wants them to be. He's turning the switch and the voice sank somewhat, but the words were still distinguishable, so it's a failure overall for him. And that's a theme that has been recurring so much, right? He walks through the door quickly, but dust is still coming with him. He is able to make it up the stairs, but he has to pause many times. He is able to turn the voice down, but you can still hear it. Continuing. The instrument, the telescreen it was called, could be dimmed, but there was no way of shutting it off completely. He moved over to the window, a smallish, frail figure with the meagerness of his body merely emphasized by the blue overalls, which were the uniform of the party. Now, see the contrast that's been drawn here. Big Brother is big, enormous face, more than a meter wide, heavy black mustache. Winston is described as smallish, frail figure, meagerness of his body emphasized, right? So again, that ties into ideas of being small, of being pointless, um, of your actions not having any value, right? Of you not having any value. So that's already one of the major themes, even just from the first page of the book. Continuing, his hair was very fair, his face naturally sang- sanguine, his skin roughened by coarse soap and blunt razor blades, and the cold of the winter that had just ended. End of page 1. Again, the idea of things doing what they need to do but not doing them well. Blunt razor blades. What is a blunt razor blade? It's something that cuts but isn't sharp. Isn't doesn't do what it is designed to do very well, right? And that's something that's kind of defining the class of people that Winston belongs to here, because his skin is roughened by the blunt razor blades. That's what makes him. So I think that this first page was pretty interesting, and the main message that I took from that was mainly the idea that Winston felt very small in this world, that he felt very pointless, that his actions had no importance. And I will just look over my notes here to see if I missed anything. Right. I don't know if you noticed that, but another thing is that we get a visual description of Big Brother way earlier than we get a description of Winston, which is strange considering that Winston is our main protagonist. Yet we get a description of Big Brother 2 paragraphs earlier. Um, so that maybe reinforces the idea that Big Brother is so much more important than someone like Winston. The idea of scarcity, we went over that. Resting several times. Idea of incompetence, we went over that. Observation, went over that. Um, and so that concludes my notes for the first page. And I think it was pretty interesting. And it's definitely starting to build the setting for this world. For It's definitely starting to build the setting for this world, which is kind of a desolate world, broken down in ruins, where stuff doesn't really work. Um, the cold winter, right? Sort of this idea of a desolate land, um, and the idea of something being broken down, no longer of use, not being very in very good prime condition. So we'll see. Seems pretty interesting so far. Um, we'll go over page 2 tomorrow. So if you people enjoyed this sort of breakdown, you should let me know, and we'll do more of them. And be sure to let me know what your thoughts were listening to this first page of 1984 by George Orwell. And yeah, no, that's about it. I will see you guys on the next episode. Bye bye.